Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of April 12, 2021. First, to quickly go over the predictions of last week, I did expect, based on the transit of Mars squaring Neptune, that there would be a major drop last week, especially on Thursday and Friday, and that actually did not materialize. We did have, I think, fairly reasonably nice week in terms of the stock market. That said, there were definitely some manifestations of that transit just in terms of the various events, which unfortunately we can expect to come up again sometime in late August through early September. So just to mention a few, obviously there was some ongoing discharge of the various, of the basically wastewater from the old phosphate plant at Piney Point in Florida in the US. And so they're dumping basically contaminated water into the ocean. Then on the 6th of April, there was some news about an Iranian spy ship, quote unquote, damaged in an attack in major, along the major Red Sea shipping route. There was obviously also an unfortunate accident in the US when a Navy medic, which of course this is double Neptune, Navy and medic, shot some people in Maryland around Fort Detrick facility, which also is known for basically, it's a place I guess where they used to have the biological warfare program, and now they're still researching various deadly pathogens. So again, we're talking about bio research. This is something that's a Neptunian basically manifestation, and somebody who is obviously going around shooting people or being aggressive. That's a Mars, negative Mars manifestation with Mars squaring Pluto, squaring Neptune. This is what we would expect. Various problems related to either Navy, ships, bioresearch, healthcare, and individuals or places that would be involved. And again, that probably will be involved again in late August through early September, will yet again be individuals or places of the same nature. And there are other events of similar nature where basically Japan had to, I guess, send their destroyer on the 7th of April because they were concerned about some Chinese carrier group passing by. Then on the 9th of April, US Navy sent a warship to the India's exclusive economic zone. I guess it was a part of some exercise or something happening in the area. But I guess there's some minor conflict in terms of like India considering this particular zone as off limits, and US saying no, that there's no legal basis for that. Again, nothing terrible happened out of that, but just that the fact that there was this minor conflict at the time. And of course there was also unfortunately a shooting by the ex-NFL pro athlete, which again, athlete sports are all falling under the domain of Mars. And so Philip Adams, he had shot several people, including the doctor that I guess used to prescribe him some medication, and then the doctor stopped the medication, and then the person went and basically killed the doctor and his family. And so along the same lines, we have this influence of something to do with sports. This time it wasn't military, but sports. It also falls under the domain of Mars or Aries, and having some troubles related to like medicine. And this time it was again medical worker who was involved. Unfortunately, the doctor obviously got killed. And then lastly, and I'm recording this on the 12th, the predictions were posted yesterday on the 11th to my blog at listengood.com. But on the 12th, I see some more news basically out of Japan, where they had authorized, or they confirmed that they will plan to release the contaminated water from the Fukushima reactor in some time, I guess in a few years, into the ocean. And speaking of that, tangentially, indeed in 2024 and 2025 especially, we will have Neptune basically moving into areas, and with that, definitely I would expect some problems related to, yet again, Neptune, so water, so shortage of, say, clean water, etc. And that's possibly when they might start releasing this contaminated water. So definitely not, I would say, not a good development for in terms of environmental situation. So moving on to this week, even though there was no major huge drop last week, I actually expect this week to be kind of better, because again, there are no really huge major negative transits this week. We will have the trine between Mars and Jupiter this week, so it's actually quite beneficial, and it will involve the signs of Aquarius and Gemini. So that will be beneficial for things like IT, communications and transportation businesses, social media, anything that has to do with like online sales, so expediting those things or getting a green light for new projects, starting new projects, especially on the 17th. There might be some announcements about maybe a new social media platform being launched, or a new maybe phone or a new car, or some, again, transportation communication device, or some developments that relate to airlines, something that's like high-tech, innovative, and those things that are announced this week will, again, things will probably be popular, or businesses involved, or projects or services involved will probably be well received. So that's definitely a beneficial time for those kind of for those domains. In terms of the stock market direction, I think it will actually be an up week, and every day of the week I gave it basically a greater probability of market going up than down. In terms of the specific days of the week, for Monday, my prediction was that there will be increased news about silver, and to me it looked positive that the silver would go up. I see this now at the, like I said, the end of the day on Monday, that actually it went down. It did go down like 1 point, I don't know, it was over 1.5%. So a fairly significant drop. So definitely there was more focus on silver. However, it actually went down. That said, I do still think that around the 17th of April, we will see a reversal in silver prices. And as of this time, I still think that in the next few days, silver may go up, and the 17th might be still a top. And if silver continues going down for the rest of the week, again, I think 17th will be a reversal point, most likely, regardless of the direction. But I think still it will be a top. And that will probably have to do with some sort of news out of the US about either the value of US dollar, some concerns about the inflation, or some changes in some financial policies. So those two things will likely be related. And along the same lines, I think that the value of gold would also reverse around the 17th. And I think also it may go up in the next few days. If not, like I said, the 17th will likely be a reversal one way or the other. As far as like a few other days worth mentioning, April 5 through 15, I may see yet again focus on IT, like airlines, high tech, communication, transportation, cars, etc. And in addition to this particular week being beneficial for those areas, I think there may also be announcements about some long-term projects, or restructuring of a business, or some long and large-scale engineering project, or even kind of rethinking of how things should even be done. Sort of, it's more than just like one project, but perhaps this larger vision may be introduced as far as like a new, shipping route, or a new way of selling something online, or new way of even doing business, again, related to transportation, communication, especially like airlines or cars, for example. So maybe like nationalizing an airline, or restructuring a social media company, launching a new social media company, especially, like I said, the 17th of this week, 17th of April, or maybe coming up with this new way of sending, receiving massive data volumes, but again, some new approach that's previously perhaps was an idea, and this time it's implemented. Maybe, again, promoting some new route, some opening it at a new, train route or something like that. Then the period of about basically this week, April 12th through 18th, and especially the 14th through the 17th of April, may particularly beneficial, as I mentioned, for IT, communication, transportation, retail sales, social media, online retailers, even airlines, just in general, and basically projects may proceed faster. Certain new concepts may be introduced that are popular, or new items, not items, but like new products may be introduced, new car, new phone, or some sort of new way of doing business, and things may proceed faster than before, maybe than expected. But also this particular week may be beneficial for areas related to publishing, also international travel, and higher education. So perhaps if there are international students that are waiting to be allowed to travel, maybe due to COVID, to their international, campuses, now maybe things will move more smoothly, where they can get visas and they can go and study abroad, or maybe for publishing there's some new platform or some new innovative way of distributing materials, especially educational materials, is introduced. That is makes things kind of expand faster, further, to maybe more international locations, or to introduce maybe foreign languages to new audiences, or to introduce some sort of educational contact to get more students. Maybe students can enroll online more easily, or something along those lines. And also just kind of facilitate transportation across long distances. So again, this could be related to like opening a new route, or it could be specifically related to education, where again the data, educational information, or students can now travel more easily. Let's see. This week again, 12th through the 18th of April, may see increased news globally about all things related to Mars as well, which is something that I mentioned before. Some things like sports, weapons, military, but also any sort of aggressive and risky activities. And so there we may hear about new initiatives, new products, new deals, contracts, like a large weapon sales, new agreements, new leaders, and the value of related businesses and products, but also related expenditures may go up. So there's something may go up in price, and but there's still a large agreement made, and it's somehow involving again either sports, athletes, weapons, or military. And particularly, there may be some expansion. Again, since I mentioned we will have Mars trining Jupiter, so that's beneficial for expanding things, especially internationally. So maybe increased number of troops are deployed somewhere, or maybe there's some movement of troops internationally, or some collaboration is expanded with international partners, again related to either military or sports in particular, or some large global scale sports project is launched, or some team, or some, again, sports type of sport is expanded to include more locations, more types of athletes, or something along those lines. Let's see. So on the 13th, specifically on Tuesday, we may hear some surprising announcements related to currencies, cryptocurrencies, banks, some financial news. And either the news may be surprising and expected, or something that perhaps was expected but just comes sooner than anticipated. And this may involve some sort of a high-tech approach. So again, either digital currencies, or some technology, some IT feature that's used to facilitate exchange of financial information, or some technical innovation, or implementation of digital currency proceeds faster than expected. Wednesday, Thursday overall look like up days to me, especially for those domains that I just mentioned. Then the 15th and 16th, which would be Thursday and Friday of this week, may see possible escalation of either military tensions, or increased number of protests, conflicts, power struggles, and again, they may involve police, military, or sports and athletes. So maybe there's some brawl at some sports game, or protests against police brutality. And we already, of course, have those in the US ongoing, but Thursday and Friday may see increased, sort of escalated activities in that area, unfortunately. And the reasons for that, or the triggering event or associated situation, may be related to perceived some sort of excessive control on the part of some government, or some oppression, again, from authorities, or some excessive control exercised by some corporation or corporations, especially like large established entities. Or there may be concerns about the suspicious or manipulative activities, yet again, by these large corporations or some governmental authorities. It could be concerns about like an actual company doing something that's either suspicious or manipulative, kind of basically exerting too much power. Or it could be literally some news about the particular governmental or corporate leader where they are accused of doing something illegal, where they're benefiting for themselves and taking advantage of things, or that they're just basically their moral characters questions because they're engaged in something that they shouldn't be engaging in. It could be, yet again, especially either a military-related person who is like extra macho, likes to take risks, or it could be an actual athlete. So it could be like maybe either a person, like an athlete, say, leads a protest against police brutality, or athlete is, hurt during some encounter with, say, police, or it could be that the, say, athlete does actually something that they shouldn't have been doing, and that it reflects negatively on them, and the people are kind of angered over that. Or it could be like a governmental official is accused of doing something illegal or something deceptive. Maybe they're like stealing money, or not paying their taxes, something along those lines. Let's see. And then moving on to Saturday. As I mentioned, the 17th is Saturday, but it's actually still an important date where I think there may be the peak of sort of increased focus on IT, communication, transportation, airlines, cars, retail sales, social media, online retailers, etc., where if there is indeed an announcement or anticipated announcement about some, say, new product in those areas, or new social platform, or new airline route, or new way of, communicating, transporting people, shipping things, or even sending data, that's when there may be a major announcement coming up, and I think it probably will be a successful project, whatever is launched at that time. And so at the same time, there may also be some minor or maybe medium size, I don't know, controversy about this particular project. Perhaps it may be seen as at odds with some established policies, some expectations established by either governments or corporations. So something about it may be different or at odds. Maybe they're not following some regulations that are in place, or some policy is sort of not being followed. At the same time, there may also be on Saturday or maybe Friday through Sunday, but especially on Saturday, increased news about some prominent social media personality, and again, it could be somebody who's, again, an athlete, military person, or somebody who's acting extra macho or taking risks, like somebody who likes, I don't know, jumps out of the airplane or something like that for fun. So not necessarily an athlete per se, but somebody who's like a, risk taker. And so we may hear about potentially, again, that person somehow being active, either taking a stance against some cause, or involved in protests, or protesting maybe excessive, what is perceived as excessive control by government, so against maybe taxes, or against governmental controls, or against police brutality, or something along those lines, where, again, this could be associated with some protests, or with just some increased activity just online. Let's see. And generally speaking, around Saturday, but again, could be Friday through Sunday, issues of like freedom of speech, regulation of social networks, and controls imposed on international shipments and movement may be kind of more in focus on those days. So in terms of just the background influences, this particular week doesn't have, like I said, too many strong negative influences, but generally speaking, through about November of next year, we will have on-off this square between Uranus and Saturn sort of upon us, and it will start being felt a little bit more strongly in June, especially towards the end of June, early July, where it will be joined by Mars to form a T-square. And so if indeed, and usually basically what this would manifest as increased in either geopolitical tensions or various protests like anti-governmental protests, and various accidents, and also potentially increased in earthquakes or some like landslides, things like that. And with Mars in the picture, it may manifest as specifically like fires, explosions, things are being basically too hot, whether literally there is a fire, because obviously this will be summer, at least in the northern hemisphere, or it could be heated up because of, again, some anger, some aggression. And so if indeed there are like already ongoing some protests or some discontent, things may really heat up at the end of June, early July, as well as there may be just accidents because, again, something overheated and exploded, and just basically not a very safe time to be traveling places, I would say. For the US, period of March 1st through May 1st of this year, and then also picking up later in August, end of August of this year, and all the way through end of February of 2022, may be a time where there may be some either confusion or uncertainty or a lack of clarity, or some either missing information or just things are kind of in the air related to military, weapons, Navy, and partnership agreements or deals with international partners. So some military partnerships may be unclear, or perhaps movement, or it could be unclear because it's purposefully, maybe say ships are being moved to a location where it's not necessarily disclosed, or the reason for them moving there, it's not clear. Or it could be the actual agreements themselves undergo some change, but it's not quite clear. Either publicly it's not being made clear, or the partners themselves are slightly confused as to what the new agreement, rules are, something along those lines. And unfortunately, because of some confusion, maybe it's due to, say, foggy weather or just excessive precipitation, or confusion because there's miscommunication, there's a greater, at this time, there might be greater than usual probability of just some maritime accidents or escalating tensions. And again, most likely it will not be due to any sort of intentional, attack, but rather it just could be, again, miscommunication or just something leaked, like a chemical leaked, oil spill, or something along the lines, again, related to Neptune, which would be bioweapons, submarines, any sort of unseen threats, such as like related to spying, hacking, or some, I guess I already said submarines, anything that's unseen or unclear where things are coming from. And that's for the US. Let's see. And this week, this influence is the strongest on the 16th and 17th of April. And then next time period where things again may pick up, where we may hear more sort of continuation of perhaps certain activities along those lines, will be around 30th of August. And at that time, we may expect repeat of events that perhaps were prominent late March through early April. So if there are, tensions involving, say, Navy having to respond to something, or some concerns about some agreements, again, related especially to Navy, but really military in general, those same topics may come up starting late August, and will continue through end of February of next year. And as I mentioned previously in some other weekly predictions, the general time period for US from April of this year into March of next year, and especially this year, April through September, and for next year, February through March, we'll see some really kind of increased news about topics related to oil, gas, but also chemicals, pharmaceuticals, yet again, Navy, water, but also pollution. It could be, precipitation, hurricanes, water erosion, contamination, but also beverages, religion, and drugs, as well as healthcare and, prisons. So all of those, yet again, Neptunian subjects will be sort of strongly in the news. But at that time, this is a fairly unique, I wouldn't say unique, but once in a lifetime, I guess, change that we may experience, where there will be some pivoting in some of these areas where things will be done differently that they have been done for like decades, and there may be some major projects related to, say, Navy or underwater exploration, maybe laying of undersea cables, something along those lines, something that is not done very frequently but will have major impact, or perhaps some new initiatives related to oil, gas, pharmaceuticals that again are fairly major and sort of almost relate to pivoting those areas to some new way of basically organizing their business, like the pharmaceuticals are developed differently, distributed differently, or obviously we see that with oil, like maybe pivoting to like new renewable energies will affect oil industry. But again, this is not a temporary kind of a thing, but rather something that's like a new pivoting, sort of a pivot in a new direction that will have long, like decades long impact, and it's going to involve some maybe new policies and new engineering, large-scale projects, some major restructuring, and it may bring with it some dissatisfaction because there may be some confusion, at least initially, about what's happening, where things are heading, or there's not enough sort of clear communication about some details of what's happening. And two, there may be concerns because it may correspond with periods of excessively wet weather, floods, and hurricanes. So that's just from weather perspective, things may get affected, and so there's a large hurricane, for example, larger than usual, and it may affect oil industry, something along those lines, to the point where things just need to be really rebuilt. And again, this may be worse than usual at this time period. Let's see. And there may also be at the same time for those same industries, so like oil, gas, pharmaceuticals, like beverage companies, even Navy, and also banks. There may be some associated breaches of data, some hacking. So maybe like a bank or pharmacy chain are hacked, but it may be very difficult at this time to trace where the hack came from or what exactly was lost. So there's some uncertainty about either the cause of it or what exactly had happened. And again, that may, of course, elicit anger from the affected parties. And as I mentioned again previously, but just to repeat, because we're in April, August, and December of 2021, we'll see, I think, increased news out of the US about US financial policies, value of US dollar, and associated with that, value of gold and silver. This particular week, the 17th, to me looks like a reversal date. I think still it might be a top, but either way, I think it will be a reversal date. And upcoming August 9th and then December 15th may similarly be significant reversal dates for gold and or silver. And also the times when we may expect increased news about US fiscal policies and changes, some significant changes in the US dollar, perhaps some news about inflation or something like that. And finally, to touch on the oil, I did predict that last week would be sort of a down period for oil, and I think it did drop somewhat in price. It wasn't like a huge drop, but again, things, under this transit of Mars squaring Neptune is not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing, I guess, that we had was under the Neptune and Saturn negative transit. But basically, I think because this transit of Mars squaring Neptune had passed, I think from now on, at least this week, oil should not have any reason to continue sort of going down. It may go up. I'm not sure it will be a huge jump up, but it certainly is not being suppressed this week, at least. However, any sort of oil-related news that we may have seen last week, there will likely be increased focus on the same topics or in oil and gas in general, yet again in the end of August and early September, especially September 1st through 3rd, and yet at the same time, I would say there's a good chance of market going down, perhaps again because of news of either about pharmaceuticals, meaning like maybe another wave of COVID or some other kind of pandemic or epidemic, or concerns about oil prices at the time. So that would be another time, I guess, to focus on oil news. And before that, I would look for the date of June 21st, plus minus a day or two. And at that time, actually, there may be positive news for oil, where around the 21st, oil may actually go up around the 21st and a few days preceding the 21st of June. So that wraps it up for me. And excuse me, I hope you are having a great week, and all the best, and come back and check me out next week. Until then, goodbye everyone.